Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 64.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to bringing you useful information on custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques to take your game to new heights. Well, sometimes I think timing is everything. I'm glad that today I'm publishing this interview with Keith Chatham to talk about custom fitting of single-length clubs, because just this morning, Cobra Golf announced their own line of single-length irons. To me, this is a pretty strong indication that single-length golf clubs are much more than a fad, something that many golfers can benefit from. We've been talking almost every day on our AGCP club fitting forum about how to best do custom-fit single-length irons, and so I'm very glad for you to hear from Keith today about his present experiences in single-length fitting. So enjoy this interview. Hello, this is Tony Wright with the Golf Improvement Podcast, and today I'm talking with Keith Chatham from Precision Fit Golf in Kerrville, Texas. He's the 2006 Club Maker of the Year, and AGCP Master Fitter. And I think, Keith, this is you're the first one I've done 3 podcasts with. So thanks for doing this today. And we're going to talk about single-length custom club fitting today. So hi there.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hey,
Glad to be back.
Yeah, and you recovered from Italy now, huh?
Yeah, I sure did. Came back here, and allergies were real bad last week. That's why I couldn't do the podcast last week, and it got to me and everything. But I went heavy on my medications, and I'm okay today.
Well, you know, everybody's resistance on those kind of trips gets a little low, so that's how it goes. Well, we've got, I hope, some interesting things to talk about today. So. And it's I'm going to put this in the notes, but today is an interesting day to do this because Cobra announced their single-length irons today. So kind of showing that this may be more of a really pervasive thing than some people might have thought. And we've been seeing that. So from your standpoint, Keith, what have you seen as some of the biggest drivers for golfers coming for fittings in terms of single-length clubs? You know, almost everybody, for example, mentions DeChambeau and things like that. But in terms of your customers, why have you seen them starting to come to you about these?
Well, 2 things is I have been advertising these locally in the newspaper and on a morning sports radio station here.
Oh, okay.
So I think that has done some. Several of the customers have told me that they've seen my ads in the newspaper or heard my advertisement on the radio, and also the DeChambeau effect. I have people come in and say, "Well, I know DeChambeau has done it and everything," and then the others is maybe they've seen my ad in the paper and curiosity, because some golfers, play better with fairway clubs and struggle with irons, and especially with the longer irons, say 4, 5, and 6 iron. And so they're coming in asking questions and everything. And I think those are the main reasons that people are coming in.
And then I think it's sort of taken off a little bit, as it goes along too, at least around here, that, one guy does something and, word of mouth always has an effect, I think. But,
yeah, I've sold 3 additional sets just from word of mouth, or someone came in and said, "Well, I tried your customer's clubs. He's a friend of mine. I hit him on the range and everything." And they know that I have sets here, for them to take out and play 3 or 4 rounds. And so they're curious. They've hit them. They hit them pretty good. So word of mouth has been is starting to get much better.
Yeah. So I'm sure you're a little bit like me. When I kind of started thinking about single length and fitting systems and things, I tried to sort of use what I did before, but I realized I think I couldn't do that. But from your standpoint, what are you doing that's a little bit different in terms of what your fitting system is for single length irons compared to conventional irons?
Only one thing. I start at 36.5 inches, the 8-iron length. I did buy the 7-iron Eurofit from Tom Wishon. I still have about 4 of the iron adapters, so I'm in good shape there. And I'll use the 7-iron at the 36.5 inch. And the thing that may be a little different is I use extensions. And instead of just normally going with the 1/2 inch extensions for 1/2 inch or 4/10 extensions in the incremental length and stuff, I also use a 1/4 inch extension.
Yeah.
And try to see if some people might do just a little bit better as far as the center hits on the face at 36.75, and then I will try the 1/2 inch extension at 37. So that's the only 2 things that I'm doing totally different.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like that too. But I also, and personally, I did a little bit from listen to what Roy Nix said, and although I use fast fit connectors, I got a 5-iron and a 9-iron now, so people can check those out once they fit with 7-irons. I mean, I'm like you using 7-irons in terms of my fitting. So
I use the 7-iron to get the best length and weight as close that I can get on a center face hit. And then I do the lie angle.
Yeah.
And then once I have that, and if they want to take out the 5, 7, and 9, then I'll use the shaft that I'm going to use for them. I'll have the weight and the MOI and everything correct, and I'll bend to the 1 lie that they need for them. Then they can take the clubs out and hit them.
Yeah. Well, benefits are really important. So far, what have you seen in terms of some of the most key benefits in terms of playing single-length clubs? And, is there any, sort of a 2-part question, or any different type of golfers seem to have any greater benefits in terms of single-length?
Yes, I'm going to say so, that there is. I think the person that normally shoots 80 to 100 might benefit, but also the guys who struggle with their short irons. And here's what I'm finding out. They're real short irons. So if they struggle with like pitch and wedge and gap wedge and everything, they're leaving things short all the time, or maybe they're decelerating in their swing and everything. And I have seen that almost everyone has told me that they love the pitch and wedge, gap wedge, and sand wedge being longer. That fills a gap for them, because if maybe they did not have a club that they could hit 70 yards before, mainly because the gap wedge or the sand wedge they were trying to use, they would decelerate and everything. Now we've got a longer club that's going to go longer distance, and it fills that gap. And so that's one of the things that surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of thought that would be a little bit of something, but it kind of surprised me a lot, because just about everyone that I've sold to has told me that they really like the pitch and wedge, gap wedge, and sand wedge from the fairway.
I haven't personally gotten that feedback, but I haven't asked that. Maybe I was just sort of assuming it. That's interesting. I mean, certainly some of the people. I haven't fit this guy yet, but I'm going to be fitting a guy that hit like a 205-yard 7-iron. I mean, that was in a whole nother arena of clubs, but he just loved the feel throughout of them. Yeah. It was like an X-Flex KBS shaft.
Yeah. The other thing that's a little interesting, now I've only had 2 people that I consider to be fast swingers, above 82 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Okay, with the 7-iron. And both of those, what they struggled with was not the length, because they could hit them a long ways, but accuracy. And so what I'm finding out with just about everybody is that the single length, because of the shorter length and everything, that they're a lot more accurate. And on the flight scope, I'm seeing, the dispersion rates go down quite a bit, sometimes by half, 50%. And so that's something, another little thing that surprised me, because the 2 guys, one of the guys that came in was swinging 86 miles per hour, another one around 84, 85. But the 86 mile per hour guy, I mean, we used his 7-iron and his longer clubs when I fit him. And I had him try, even on the flight scope, the 5.7 and 9 and his 5.7 and 9. And literally, we cut his dispersion rate down 50%.
Boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he bought the clubs, and he has gotten back with me a couple times, come back in, and has told me that dispersion rate is really good. He was a 3 handicap. He told me that he has shot right around par or 1 over several times, and actually twice has shot 1 stroke, like under 70, 69. He shot 69, 70 when par may be at the one course we have here is 71. So he's shooting a little bit under par now, and it's due to the accuracy going into the greens with his second shot into the green.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I haven't done as much, and I don't think you mentioned it. You've done what, I guess 13 or 14, somewhere around there, fittings so far. Isn't that right? I think I've done like 3 or 4 myself.
Yeah. And I just had a guy right before I left yesterday afternoon. One of the 2 that I had out demoing the irons and everything that called me. He's coming in Thursday, and we're going to do a fitting and stuff. So that will be my 13th sold set.
Yeah. Pretty interesting stuff so far. And now, one of the things that has been real interesting for me in terms of the sets that I've done is maybe, you did talk about the wedges some, but maybe I wouldn't call them the outliers, but sort of the 2 ends. When you get into the 5-iron and the 5 hybrid in the Sterlings, for example, and into the sand wedge. Some people that I've worked with, haven't been able to sort of make the jump into the sand wedge and want to have a wedge, for example, that's shorter like they had, or they're wanting something, like a 4 hybrid or even a 3 hybrid. Talk a little bit about what you've been doing, to sort of expand the set or get a little bit outside the, maybe I'm not explaining it right. It's kind of the reaches of the set.
I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
First and foremost, number 1, if they have their current sand wedge, that is 35 inches, 35 and a quarter, maybe 35 and a half at the most, and they can get out of the sand and on the green real good, if they're pretty good, that club will stay in their bag. As I mentioned to you before, most of the people are liking the sand wedge, the 1.5 inch longer sand wedge, anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inch longer sand wedge from the fairway. So that sand wedge will be a fairway club.
Okay.
And be hit into the green. I'm telling everybody comes in, said if you are hitting your current sand wedge, if you're getting out of the sand and onto the green decently, well, that club is going to stay in your bag. You will have 2 sand wedges, okay? And because what I have found with just about everybody is that longer sand wedge fills that gap. If before they didn't have a club that they could hit 65, 70 yards, okay? They didn't have one. Now they have one, and so that fills that gap. When it comes to the hybrid, what I have found out with almost everyone that has gotten the hybrid hits longer than the 5-iron. Yes, they're the same loft, but the hybrid has a much lower and rearward center of gravity, so it goes higher and carries more. I'm finding on average with most people anywhere from 7 to 9 yards longer. Okay, so just immediately, if it's made as the same length and everything, they could also have the 5 hybrid and the 5-iron. The 5 hybrid will act as a 4-iron into the green.
Yeah.
Okay. And if they have current hybrids, and let's just say they may have a 4 hybrid and 5 hybrid already, but it's an OEM club, and they're 2 inches longer than the iron set, now they have a big gap. What I have found that works is building the hybrid a 1/2 inch longer than their set, and getting the MOI, trying to get the MOI a little bit as the towards the irons, but sometimes I do something that maybe I've told you before, sometimes I do what's called a tweener. as a guess. That means in between. And I may get the MOI of the longer hybrid that they have, the MOI of the irons that I'm building for them, and pick an MOI that's somewhere kind of close to being in the middle. And actually, I know people say, well, you're guessing at that. Well, no, I've tried it myself, and I've tried it with several customers in the past, and I have been very close. It works real well. I've gotten good feedback that way. And so I've done that also with several of the guys because of the fact that if they've got a 5 hybrid or a 4 hybrid that they hit, and now they get this 5-iron hybrid in a single length, and they have a 25, maybe a 30-yard gap. We have to fill that.
Yeah, right.
And so what I'm doing is, like I said, I'll make it either a half inch longer, and then I'm trying to get the MOI, okay, and the only thing that may hold me back there is the physical ability of the golfer. If I have a golfer that's not, can't repeat the swing very well, or if they're a super slow swing speed and stuff, they're not going to be able to handle, a D7 swing weight. And so with that extra long club and stuff, that may not be an option for him. But another thing is, with one of the guys, what I did, I explained everything to him about how the OEMs really are not making their hybrids to be exact iron replacements. They're making them to be fairway clubs because they're anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2 inches longer. And I have taken their 4 hybrid, cut it down, reworked it, re-swing weighted it, and now they've got a good gap distance between what their 3 hybrid and now their 5-iron. So that's another option that you can do, is you can work on their current clubs and make sure that gap distance is good.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical to get the gap distance. That's been my experience so far too. And
yeah, it is.
Yeah, and particularly, I had one guy that he found an absolute great option in like a 3 and a 5 wood because he's killing it. But so he really did have a huge gap there. But we found him actually it was a 3 hybrid that fit right into what he had with his irons, and it was definitely longer than the Sterling. So, yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the fascinating things so far to me from the swing standpoint is how you have to be. I mean, if you think about single length clubs, if you're going to use them, the whole idea is that you're making the same swing. But people will tend, at least I found with like the long irons, to almost want to do something different. They have a hard time just sort of setting up the same way. And it's a huge issue, I think. Well, not an issue isn't the right word, but just something that they have to attend to. Talk about your experiences there with trying to make sure they create the same setup and same swing with their single length irons.
I'll tell you honestly what I found. I don't care about the turn or the sternum or the swing or anything.
Yeah.
It's all about ball position. Okay, that's it. The 5-iron, 6-iron are the only 2 clubs that have given any of my customers problems, and 5-iron mostly. And so a lot of times I replace the hybrid with it, because if they do hit a little bit fat with the wider sole and everything, instead of digging in, it's going to slide and go up under, and they still have a fairly good hit. But it's all about ball position. And I preach this to them the whole time that we're doing the fitting. I must say it 40 times during a fitting, and seriously, I do.
Yeah. And
even before they leave, it's all about ball position. Ball position. This is one of the reasons why I've gone to the point that when I have that 5, 7, and 9, I have the demos in the 5, 7, and 9 and everything, is that I want them to play at least 3, maybe 4 rounds before they decide to buy them. And the reason for that is you have to retrain the brain muscle memory, because when they pick up a 5, they want that ball position to be up closer, further forward in their stance. And so they end up hitting the ball fat. It'll bounce off the club, hit the ball, ugly shots. And so I'm to the point of what I have seen is that it's all about ball position. Okay, even with their swing, even if they need help with the swing, yes, I can tell them to go to their local professional that they've seen before and everything. But if I get them in the correct ball position and they can keep it there, they will make a good hit with it. That's all there is to it. So I'm to the point when I look at it that it's number one first and foremost, number two, number three, number four, number five on the list.
And even 40 then, right?
Yeah, it's ball position. The people are having problems with the 5 and the 6, and not as much with the 6, but a lot of problems with the 5, and that's why I recommend go play 3 or 4 rounds with these demo clubs that I have that go out. And yes, they generally come back and tell me, the ones that come back and tell me, well, said after about the 3rd round, then all of a sudden I started hitting it really good. And 3rd and 4th round, I did real well with them. And so that's fine. The ones that come back and say, I just can't handle the 5, all right, I probably will give them the hybrid to go out and hit and try. Or sometimes if people tell me and I look at them and I see their swing speed, I see their physical ability to be able to repeat the swing. If it's not that real good, if it's not very good or anything, then I'm going to give them the 5 hybrid and the 5 iron both to take out in the demo hybrid. And that way they can hit them both. And those people that have done that have always come back and bought the hybrid and not the 5 iron.
Yeah, it's just a little bit easier to hit and get in the air and things like that, right? Yeah, it just launches the ball a little more. Yeah. Well, I'm going to remember the 40 ball position thing, so this is probably one of the biggest takeaways for me today. So, so Keith, what from your standpoint in the fittings that you've had, what have been the biggest surprises so far?
Number one, everyone that has bought them, they're telling me they're anywhere from about 7 yards to 9 yards longer than their current incremental length. I think that's due to after they play 4 rounds, or maybe some have come back to me now and they've played 15 rounds, they've retrained the brain and the brain muscle memory, and now they are hitting him real good. Okay, so that's number one. Number two has been accuracy, as I'm seeing, like I said, up to 50% better accuracy with 80% of the shots with these things. That's
phenomenal, really.
Yeah. And even when I get someone that had a gentleman that has had some health problems and stuff, but he was only swinging the semi-iron about 60, 62 miles per hour. And he even told me when he bought the clubs, he said, I'm a little bit longer. He said maybe 5 to 7 yards. He said, man, he says, these things are like throwing darts. He says, I'm just as accurate can be. He said, I'm hitting everything within a 5 to 6 yard circle.
Yeah.
So those two things are the biggest. And I know when someone comes in, the number one curiosity thing about them is, well, they're so much shorter. Am I going to lose distance? So then I have to explain that I only sell the Tom Wishon Sterlings. I don't sell the Pinhawks or any of the others.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is because I think Tom is just a superior club designer. And in talks with him and what he said on his forum and everything, where each one of these heads were individually designed for loft, center of gravity and everything, just makes these clubs much better, in my opinion.
Yeah, the fact that he spent 2 years doing this. I mean, and if you remember, I did the thing with Jacob. I mean, he said no in the beginning.
Yes.
He didn't do this because he was just trying to sell clubs. He wanted to do it right. So, it's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, I'm like you. I'm only carrying the Sterlings. And that's not to downgrade anything else. It's just that I trust what he did. So.
Yeah, and of the single length out there, I have had customers who've come in with 1-iron golf, and most of those were steel shafts. They're very heavy steel shafts. Everything is done just to swing weighting, and even though if the shafts are sorted properly, you and I both know the MOI might be close.
Yeah.
But I don't consider what they're doing with their shaft sorting, like my shaft sorting system, I think is much better. And so we are getting, a better product in the end on that.
Yeah. Well, this has been great again, Keith. Any final words about, the best advice for golfers in terms of playing single-length clubs? And I got a few ideas about what you're going to say, but we'll listen.
Yeah. Well, if someone has curiosity about them, okay, find a club fitter that carries them. I personally suggest who carries the Tom Wishon Golf Technology Sterlings, and find someone who carries those, and then ask them if they have some demos and everything. And be sure, this is very critical, be sure that the person that you talk with, the fitter and everything, be sure that they fit you to the lie angle even before you go out and demo them, because it's very important. One of the biggest things you have, length and weight is always big, but lie angle and single length is extremely important.
Yeah.
And I will do a lie fitting with everybody that comes in and takes my demos out, because I don't want them hitting 6 yards to the right or 6 yards to the left. I want them to be throwing darts, at the pin. And so that's very important for people if they listen to this podcast, is make sure that you get a lie fitting before you even try the demos, because if the lie is wrong, you're not going to hit them good. And if length and weight, you can have that. You can have the 36 and a half. Sometimes what I do is I've got the 5, 7, and 9, and I may have the 7 at 36 and a half inches. I may have the 5 iron at 36 and 3/4 or something. Just tell them they're different lengths and everything, and see which ones that they hit the best. And this is just for the demo to go out. But I always do a lie fitting. I do a quick lie fitting with them to make sure that I have the correct lie with them. And so anybody that's listening to this that's thinking about it, I believe, my personal opinion is that when you go out, no matter what length that you have of them, the single length, you need to have the proper lie when you take them out.
That's a huge point. I appreciate that. Well, Keith, glad to have you again on today, and it was very interesting. I'll put notes about Precision Fit Golf in the show notes, also about Wishon Golf. And actually, in the interest of just sharing things, I'm putting some links to the other single length clubs, but I'm pretty close to the Sterlings myself, like you are, and I think they're great clubs. But hey, anything that helps golfers play better is a great deal, right?
That's correct. And thank you for having me here again. It's been fun today, and I hope that people that are listening to this, that they get a little bit better enlightened. And, if you have any curiosity about them, find you a club fitter that has them and try them.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Well, Keith, as always, thanks for sharing your knowledge. I learned a lot, and you reinforced some things that at least I know are very important, particularly being sure to talk with golfers about having consistent ball position with single-length clubs, and also being sure to fit for lie angle. Those were the two biggest takeaways that I got from a custom fitting standpoint today. Well, see the show notes to learn more about Keith Chatham at Precision Fit Golf. And also, I provided links in the show notes to Wishon Golf, Value Golf, Cobra Golf, and Adele Golf. As far as I know at this time, the 4 major manufacturers of single-length iron designs. Knowledge is power, right? Well, that's it for today, and a special little shout-out this morning to my grandchildren, Julia and Elliot, who helped me a little bit today because they're here, but they made sure that I could do an effective job of making this podcast interview. See you again in 2 weeks.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com